Hello, thank you for joining us today for School Breakfast Meeting USDA Requirements Using Alternative Breakfast Models. My name is Ellen Dillon. I am the Regional Field Manager for the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic States for Action for Healthy Kids. This webinar has been devised to help schools, volunteers, and community members discover how USDA rules and requirements for the upcoming 2014-15 school year can be met and implemented using alternative breakfast models. Let's go ahead and get started. Make sure some logistics are in place. Please note that you have two ways of viewing or hearing the webinar today. You can choose to call in on your telephone or use your mic and speakers. So if you look on the right-hand panel of your screen, you should have a box that looks very similar to this. Please select whichever mode for audio that you prefer. At this point, you should all be seeing my screen. Note that everyone is muted. So if you are having any issues or technical difficulties, please connect via our question box on the box there on the right-hand side. You can also raise your hand and we'll try to get to you as soon as we can. We do have an Action for Healthy Kids staff person, Caroline Rosadel Blanco, who is working on the back end to answer your questions. Please note that we will be pausing during the presentations and answering questions that are coming in so that we are able to keep up with your questions in real time and then we don't have to wait to answer them until the end. Because we know sometimes multiple people have the same question and hopefully we'll be able to get it answered for you. Note also that this call is being recorded. You will get the link as well as the reference material, the slide deck following the webinar within 24 to 48 hours. And you'll also be able to access any of that information via our archived webinars on our website. So look for that by Thursday afternoon or Friday depending, and you should be able to forward that out to any of your partners or any of your school personnel that you might want to also have listened to it. But first of all, I want to share a little bit about who we are as Action for Healthy Kids. Action for Healthy Kids fights childhood obesity, undernourishment, and physical inactivity by helping schools become healthier places. In order to do that, we are moms, dads, teachers, students, school and community leaders, and school wellness experts. We've banded together to create healthier learning environments for our children. We believe that everyone has a part to play in ending the nation's childhood obesity epidemic. Our programs, tools, and resources make that happen. We were founded in 2002 by former Surgeon General David Satcher. Today, we are more than 65,000 members strong. We are also partners with dozens of professional associations, government agencies, and corporations at the national and local level. Our goal is, just like it says here, is to create school communities where children learn how to make healthy choices from the minute they walk in the front door, like this little boy who's probably entering kindergarten, to the minute they leave at the end of the school day and at the end of their high school experience. We know that it's really important to create that sense of urgency. We hope that you'll find the Learning Connection a valuable tool. The Learning Connection helps to really make that connection between learning and health and student health. And so by showing that there's data out there to support the need for both school breakfast, healthy meals, healthy food options, as well as physical activity to help kids become better learners. So this is a great tool for you to be able to use and reference. So today's presentation, we're really pleased to present to you. We'll be doing an overview of the USDA requirements. This will be done by Nikki Edwards of the California Food Policy Advocates. Nikki is a nutrition policy advocate for CFPA, which is also how they're also known, and works closely with their Breakfast First campaign. She works with schools in California, districts all over the area, helping to strengthen school breakfast programs by improving access, participation, and nutritional quality. She's going to be doing a brief overview of the Healthy, Hunger-Free Kids Act of 2010, the 2014-15 meal requirements, as well as how that fits into alternative models for school breakfast. We're really also very pleased to introduce and have with us from Schenectady Public Schools in Schenectady, New York, Scott Stoll. Scott will be sharing with us his experience, which I think you're going to find very valuable, and to be able to ask some questions to him as well as learning what's worked in his district. So we're also going to be talking about changing perceptions and how you can work with those that might have different misconceptions of school breakfast, as well as the healthful components of it, and how you can work with those, whether they be school staff or parents or others in your community, to change those perceptions. And again, we'll be answering those questions throughout the webinar today. All right, so I am going to see Nikki. Can you go ahead?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, you're perfect.
Great. All right, good afternoon, one and all. Welcome to the National School Meals Program, and we're going to talk about breakfast today. As Ellen mentioned, my name is Nikki Edwards. I work for an organization called California Food Policy Advocates here in California. I'm located downtown in the middle of Los Angeles. And I am also a registered dietitian. And so for those of you who have not heard of California Food Policy Advocates, our organization tries to ensure that all Californians, all low-income Californians, have access to good quality food at an affordable price. And so we do work with all of the federal food programs to try and make that happen. And the school meals program being a big part of that. And so we're going to start off here with just a little bit of information, new information about the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act and the new standards that are required specifically for breakfast. And so as you are all probably aware, that schools must follow the federal requirements. There are some states that are even more stringent requirements, and then within some districts there are even more stringent requirements. And so there are different nutritional standards that school districts are following. But the decisions about what specific foods to serve and how to prepare them are left up to the local school districts and food service directors. And so there can be a lot of creativity used in terms of what the actual meals look like. The key decision makers include, obviously, the food service director or the nutrition director at the district level. Sometimes cafeteria managers have some say in what is served. Sometimes the principals can have some say in what is served. And on more globally, even the wellness committee within the school district can have the conversation about school meals and what they look like. And a variety of districts have hired dietitians specifically to meet the meal patterns. Some school districts actually hire on some chefs to be quite creative with the school meals. They can be consultants. But the legislation and the policies vary state by state and district by district on these types of folks that are involved in the school meals. Go ahead. Next slide. So the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act of 2010, you're probably all very aware and, if not, very familiar with this piece of legislation. But it reauthorized all of the child nutrition programs. And so we are going to talk a little bit about the requirements related to breakfast. But it really was landmark legislation because it was the first time in 30 years that it really made some major changes to the school meals and to the entire school food environment. So it was, we had waited a long time for this, but it was really a necessary change for the school meals programs. And at the focal point really is improving child nutrition. That is the goal and that is the mission, and that is what the focus of this act is. It's to really improve what kids are eating in schools. It authorizes more funding. It sets additional policies for the child nutrition programs, including the lunch and the breakfast program and also the summer feeding program, among some of the other food programs as well. And it addresses a number of gaps that were in previous legislation about the school meals. So, for example, previous standards set forth requirements for major nutrients based on the Dietary Guidelines for Americans, but didn't make distinctions on what types of food provided those nutrients. And so on a high level, the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act enhances school nutrition quality in the following ways. And so it did require the USDA to update the school meals program standards, which are called the meal patterns, which we'll gloss over just a little bit in a few minutes. For the schools meeting the new nutrition standards, they receive an additional 6 cents for their federal reimbursement for lunches, and that can be significant to a food service department. Many, at least in California, many of the school districts have already been certified for the additional 6 cents, and so I'm sure that's happening in your states as well. Unfortunately, there has not been any additional federal reimbursement for the breakfast program. This is only for the lunch program. But regardless, it is still a benefit to the school food service districts. So it also allows USDA to establish nutrition standards for all foods sold on campus during the school day. So you may have heard some talk online about the competitive foods, and those are foods that are sold outside of the school meals program, possibly in vending machines, possibly at the school stores, possibly for fundraising issues. And so there's a variety of food that is sold outside of the school meals, but there are nutritional requirements now set or are going to be set forth for these foods, which is wonderful because we know that a lot of times there's a lot of unhealthy food that is sold on the school campus and can be in competition with the school meals program, which are really trying to do the kids justice and feed them good quality, nutritious food. So that's really a wonderful opportunity for the school districts. And it also provides training on purchasing, processing, and the preparation of more healthful foods through the commodities program. So there's going to be more information available on that as well. In addition, the new Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act brings a couple of other changes. If you want to move to the next slide, we will take a look at those. And so it can help communities establish a local farm-to-school network and school gardens. There has been a lot of money put into the farm-to-school programs, and so school districts across the nation have a huge opportunity to implement school gardens, get kids involved in growing their own food, seeing what it looks like to have a carrot come out. And we know the research shows that when kids are more involved in the gardens and the purchasing of their food and just in food in general before it ends up on their plate, they are more likely to eat it. So that's wonderful news. It also strengthens local school wellness policies. I'm going to talk in a minute a little bit more about that, but that's a wonderful opportunity. As everybody knows, school wellness policies have been in place for a number of years now. Unfortunately, most of them have been sitting in a binder on a shelf collecting dust, and so this really motivates school districts and gives them the practices to put in place to ensure that these wellness policies actually get acted upon, and there's more attention brought to them and more energy brought to them. So that's wonderful. It also allows only lower-fat milk options to be served at school meals. So we know that the American Pediatric Association suggests that kids who are 2 years and older no longer require whole milk, and so this makes sure that's put in place. And then one thing that we are really excited about is it requires water to be made free and available during meal service. And so you would think this is sort of a no-brainer, like air should be made free and available. But there are a lot of school sites where the drinking fountains are either in a deplorable condition, they are not safe, or they can't be used. And so we're working with school districts within California here and across the nation to make sure that the water is available where and when meals are served. And if you want to go to the next slide, we will show just a couple of what that looks like. So these are a variety of different water stations. This component of the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act has been very challenging for a lot of school districts across the nation. And so we're trying to give some folks some different ideas on what that could look like. We have a whole website dedicated just to water in schools, and it's called just that, waterinschools.org. We have a toolkit there that you can go online and check out some of the different prices associated with these different types of, what do they call them, hydration stations and water stations. You see that beautiful water picture that actually was done by some parents. And so a number of school districts have worked with their PTA association to do some fundraising, to bring in some money. Thank you so much, Ellen. Wow, that's wonderful. Technology is amazing. So you'll see that that was really creative, and that was done by parents. The one below that is actually in New York, and so those are chilled water stations, which is also great. The research shows that when water is chilled, the water is more likely to be drunk. So that's also another thing to think about. And then you can go with just a 5-gallon bottle, something as simple as that. It can be refrigerated before service, before the time of service. And so it can just be wheeled out, and you can have some disposable cups there. Or you can really try and do a campaign where you're getting students to bring their own reusable water bottles. And so there are so many different campaigns. You may have heard of Rethink Your Drink and the Water Otter and many other kinds of water campaigns that are happening around there. So folks are putting up posters in the schools and really bringing attention to the need for people to drink more water. And that should be the beverage of choice for students K through 12 beyond in terms of hydration. Water should really be the go-to beverage. And so there's some ideas for you. To go back to, I had threatened to go back to school wellness policies, and here we are. And so just to give you a little more information on what's going to be required now as opposed to what was tried the first time around. So there will be public involvement required. The content of the school wellness policies should include nutrition promotion, nutrition education, physical activity, and to promote student wellness. And there will be annual progress updates required, public updates, and there is a monitoring and oversight portion of this. However, this is not final yet, and so the USDA is still seeking public comment on the proposed rule through the end of this month. If you go to this link at the end here, you can actually go on and you can make your own comments as to what you think should be in the school wellness policies. We really want to encourage folks to do that so that this time around the school wellness policies can really be utilized in a way that sort of wasn't done in the past. We want to ensure that there's a committee, a wellness committee, where different stakeholders from the school environment are involved. So that includes the principals, the teachers, the parents, some of the students. Everybody who's involved in the school should have a say in what goes into their wellness plan. And so they should be part of the wellness committee. And so we encourage everybody out there to make a comment to ensure that that language is put into the final rule, because otherwise there's too much leeway given, and then you end up with what happened the first time, which was a good intention of having a wellness policy in place, but really no action came of it. And so please visit that website and make your comments known. And so now to go on to the new meal pattern itself and what it consists of. And so the USDA really went through a lengthy process of getting expert recommendations and public comment and making sure they did a good job of looking through a lot of research to develop the new standards. And so it will increase the offerings of both fruit and vegetables every day of the week, which is wonderful. There will be a greater variety of vegetables. They've actually put in place some requirements for different colored vegetables, which is a wonderful opportunity to expose students to a whole variety of fruits and vegetables that they may not have an opportunity to try when they're at home. You know, there's a lot of areas, especially here in California and in the Los Angeles area, which are considered food deserts. And so there may not be a huge selection of different types of fruits and vegetables available in some of these areas, whereas schools have the opportunity to really expose and teach kids about what's available out there and different flavor palettes and different colors that are available within the fruit and vegetable family. There is going to be an increase in whole grain rich foods and making sure that kids are really not getting just the processed white bread and that getting some whole grains within their diets. And then a reduction in saturated fat, trans fat, and then some changes to the sodium requirements, which we'll talk about in just a little bit as well. And then this new meal pattern really ensures that the school lunches follow the 2010 dietary guidelines for Americans and that they resemble the My Plate, which I'm so glad they got rid of a pyramid, because who eats off of a pyramid? I mean, really. So this My Plate really shows you what a plate should look like. And I always tell everybody, if you take nothing else away, half your plate should be fruits and vegetables. If you can get that right, you're on the right road. And so I really like the correlation between the My Plate and the new meal pattern. And so we're going to talk a little bit of how it relates to breakfast specifically. And so this is going to be for this next coming school year. But there will be an increase in fruit offerings, and it will increase from a half a cup to 1 cup of fruit. Only a half of the offerings are allowed to be replaced by juice. And then if choosing offer versus serve, students can choose from a half a cup of the fruit. So they can be offered 1 cup, but they only need to take a half a cup. And then going into the comparison of some of the changes from what currently was required and what will be required. And so we just talked about the fruit where a vegetable substitute is allowed. The grains and the meat alternative, or alternate. And so it used to be that 2 grains or 2 meat alternative per day, or 1 each per day. Now that is changing in that there are minimum requirements for the grains. And so you can see that, and that has been now divided up by grade levels. That is one very big difference that's coming up. And so they want to ensure that there is portion control and appropriate portion sizes for the different grade levels. An elementary school kid should not be eating necessarily the same amount as a high school kid. And so the meat alternate can now be added after the grain minimums have been met. Another big change to the upcoming requirements. And so some school districts have been very creative. I'll show you some pictures in what they're providing for breakfast in that respect. And then as we go on, in terms of the grains themselves, so previously, the whole grains were encouraged, but beginning July 1, 2014, all grains must be whole grain rich, being that it needs to be 51% whole grain. So that was that's been a little bit of a change for the breakfast program, but it's I've seen a variety of different breakfasts in different school districts, and they've done an amazing job of getting the muffins and the breads to be whole grain rich, and the kids really have not noticed. So that was remarkable to see. Everybody was so fearful of that, but the kids really have not noticed the difference. And the milk really has not changed. 1 cup of fat-free, unflavored or flavored, or 1% unflavored only. And so that has not changed at all. So the milk is still required. And then in terms of the sodium, there are going to be some requirements for sodium in terms of targets. You can see this here for the different grade levels, and this is coming up again for the 2014-2015 school year. There are some links here where you can check out for yourself the comparison of the old and new requirements. We also have some samples of weekly menus if you'd like to take a look at that, and then the My Plate recommendations are also there at choosemyplate.gov. So there are some resources there available for you to look at this after the presentation. And now we get to really where my specialty lies, which is in alternative breakfast models of service. And so how do we incorporate these new requirements into alternative models of service? It can happen. These are 3 different school districts that have provided very interesting meals. You'll see here there's like a breakfast yogurt parfait, which is just a beautiful parfait with yogurt, and then it's got some nuts and dried fruit on top. Just a beautiful breakfast. Then in the central one, you see there's strawberries, and it's actually got yogurt in the other component, and then it comes with some crackers on the side to meet the grain requirement. And then this I've actually seen in a couple of school districts, and this is the bagel. It's a mini bagel with a boiled egg, and it is so popular with the younger kids. I would never have thought it, but school districts all over our state now are starting to look at that and put a boiled egg in with a bagel, which is very popular. And so in order to garner a little more support for alternative breakfast models, if you are doing a breakfast in the classroom especially, teachers' eyes are very focused on what the kids are eating. And if you can add some protein into the breakfast model, it will garner some support, some additional support from the teachers. Some school districts are just providing the grains, and teachers are very aware of that. And so if you can add a little protein into the meal, you tend to get more teacher support for that. And when we talk about alternative models of service, obviously one major one that comes to mind, and is my favorite, is breakfast in the classroom. And I'm sort of known across the state as a breakfast lady. So if this is something that you do in your state and you're familiar with it, it's wonderful. If you have not seen it in action, I highly suggest that you do. It's hard to really articulate the benefits of it and how it's really working without seeing it. When you see these kids eat together as somewhat of a family in a classroom, it is just a beautiful thing to see. Now, there are also obviously some other benefits that come up with this, which includes reducing tardiness. The kids actually get their parents to get them to school on time because they enjoy eating breakfast with their friends. A lot of times the teacher sits and eats breakfast with them as well, which is also an added bonus. We also hear from nurses in schools that they're seeing a reduction in visits due to headaches and stomach aches related to hunger. And so that's been quite dramatic in a lot of school districts that I've been working with. And so nurses don't have to keep as many snacks in the classroom as much anymore, and neither do the teachers. I'll show you, or I'll give you a link to a report on a teacher's hunger report in terms of how much hunger teachers are seeing in the classroom and how much they have to pay out of their own pockets to keep snacks in the classrooms for hungry kids. This goes down dramatically when you serve breakfast in the classroom. There is also a correlation between serving breakfast and improved test scores. And we also know that when there's testing going on in schools and school districts, a lot of times teachers actually request food to be brought into the classrooms. So why wouldn't we just do this year-round? It's sort of a no-brainer. And then because kids are actually healthier because they're eating more, there is a reduction in absenteeism. And so that's also another benefit to the school districts because they generally receive funding based upon the average daily attendance of students. So when students are sitting in their seats, they're getting a little more money. And so a reduction in absenteeism helps the school district out as well. But we do know that we need to get school staff buy-in to do this. And so this is sort of a delicate procedure and a delicate process. And so we want to bring it to the attention of the school administration nicely. And we want to just sort of show them this program and tell them the benefits and then ensure that we get any questions asked and answered. And if we go to the next slide, I'll talk very quickly about a program that we have here in LA, which is a grab-and-go model, which may be quite familiar to some of you. But this is actually breakfast on the patio, and they have just been really innovative in working with their schools to have a number of the school gates closed so that there's only one or two entrances into the school itself. And they set up these carts, these breakfast carts. So when students walk in, if they want a breakfast, they can easily just grab it. They go and they put their PIN number through the POS system. And it's just a wonderful, innovative way to ensure that the kids have access to the breakfast meal as they're coming into the school in the morning. And then right here, there's a huge area for seating, so kids actually sit together and eat breakfast together, and then they all go off to their classrooms together. So it's just a wonderful way to ensure the kids get fed in the morning. Again, you need to have a strategic placement plan for where these carts are placed. And you need to have some inviting entrees. The food needs to be good. You know, kids aren't silly. They aren't going to eat something they don't like. And so you need to make sure that the entrees are something that they like. And it does help to have a seating area close by where they can go and sit with their friends. And some of the next steps that you could take if you were interested in implementing one of these alternative models in a school district near you is speak to your food service director. They are the ones that run the program, and so they need to be supportive of what you're doing, and they need to know that it's going to be a positive addition to their food services division. And so speak to them and talk to them about it. Speak to a principal. A lot of times you can get a couple principals on board who really want to try it because they know there's a lot of hunger in their school. They know there's a lot of need. And if you get a couple of supportive principals, then generally it's sort of contagious. You get a couple schools going with these programs, and then the other schools hear about it, and they want it, and they come asking for it. So it's a great way to get started. Get a teacher on board. If there's a health teacher or a science teacher or somebody that's interested in nutrition, go talk to them. There needs to be a champion at the school district who works with you on this. Speak to the superintendent. They can also be the champion for the program. Parents have a huge voice in school districts, and so we need to get parents more involved in these types of programs. So talk to the PTA, talk to a group of parents. There is power in numbers, and like I said, parents are very powerful. And also get your local anti-hunger nutrition advocates from the community involved. I have just a slew of resources at breakfastfirst.org. The NoKidHungry.org teachers link is a report done through a national anti-hunger organization called Share Our Strength, where they did some research and they interviewed teachers all over the country talking about how much hunger they see in their classrooms and what kind of steps they've been taking to try and alleviate that, and again, going to the amount of dollars that they're spending out of their pocket to have snacks available. And so if you bring that to your school or to your principal or to a teacher near you and talk to them, and a lot of times it's just sort of taboo, nobody likes to talk about it, but everybody knows it's happening. And so that's also a wonderful tool that you can use. And then FRAC also has a number of good resources available on their website related to the school breakfast program. And so with that, Ellen, I think I am giving it back to you to answer any questions.
Yep, thanks so much, Nikki. I just want to do a quick poll. I know that we were talking and wanted to find out if people are doing any of those alternative models and get it so that they can have a better understanding of who else is on the call and their interest level. So it looks like there are quite a few of us that are, about 40% are currently instituting an alternative model, about another 27% that are not instituting a alternative model, and then another 35% are not currently affiliated with a school. So that helps us to better understand your interest as well as what experiences you've had. So thanks so much for taking that poll. So we do have a couple of questions. Just to note, if you were listening to Nikki and you wanted to ask a question, I encourage you to go ahead and put that in now. Nikki will be jumping off the call. She has some additional work to be doing this afternoon, and so she'll be jumping off our call. So if you have a question for Nikki, go ahead and make sure you submit it into the question box. But we have a couple of questions, predominantly related to the materials or the items that people are using and how do they qualify. So for example, in this question, this school district currently offers breakfast in the classroom and free breakfast for everyone in their school, which is awesome. And one of their breakfasts consists of a whole grain type, I don't want to name a name of the item because we don't want to do that, but
like a muffin or a bread or something?
Well, more of a whole grain bar or something that I think is often associated with not nutritious, maybe a sugary snack type of thing, but it is a whole grain item, and it has also 100% orange juice. So that's considered one of their meals. Is this meat fitting the requirements, and how does that fit the requirement? I know I didn't give enough detail, but I'm trying to avoid naming names and brands.
Sure. Well, what we're trying to focus on is really, we're not trying to make the healthy donut. And so we really want to try and stay away from typical foods that may not be healthy, even though we're whole graining them out. And so what we are suggesting folks do is try and, like the whole grain bagel with the egg, or we do, or the fruit parfait, or something else. I mean, there are a number of school districts that are using a variety of different types of muffins, and they're generally, I've got an oatmeal blueberry muffin, and then there's an apple muffin, there's a strawberry muffin. They're all whole grain, but we're trying to stay away from the healthier donuts, and that's, across the board with the school meals program, like the healthier pizza as well. We just don't think that's necessarily a good behavior that we want to be showing kids, because when they go out there into the real world, there isn't necessarily a whole grain donut available. I don't know if that answers the question. But I mean, it meets the requirements if it's got the 2 grains or the minimum for the week.
So it has to meet the USDA requirements that are not only related to whole grain, but also in terms of calorie contents and things like that. So in that, those specifics, yes, it can meet the requirements.
Sure.
But in other ways, I mean, if you are, say, a parent and you're seeing these things, what could you do to maybe steer someone in a different direction, do you think?
Sure. I would really open the lines of communication with the cafeteria manager. That's the first spot that I would start at. There may be a level higher that you go to, like a lot of school districts have area supervisors, which is sort of one above, and obviously then there's the food service director. So there's different levels of authority within different food services within different districts. And so I would start with the cafeteria manager and say, you know what, I really appreciate you serving the breakfast in the morning. Is there somebody that I can speak to about, the types of entrees that you're serving and, if there are some alternatives? But I would definitely, and if you can take some other parents with you, again, there is power in numbers. I had one parent who contacted me who was really trying to fight this alone, and that is a tough battle. And so if you can get some friends with you, I highly recommend that.
Great. We have a couple questions, and I'm going to lump a few of these together because I think they get to the core of the question. So in terms of next year's regulations, can you clarify the impact of next year's legislation and 100% juice offerings at breakfast? And that's the actual question, but it has to do with offering 100% juice at breakfast.
So you're right. So 100% juice will be allowed at breakfast, but only 50% of the time. And so we are encouraging school districts to just eliminate the juice and provide fresh fruit instead, because obviously the fresh fruit, you get the fiber and you get all the nutrients, whereas the juice, you just get the juice. And so, but there is some allowable, and for folks that are doing breakfast in the classroom, it becomes challenging because the teachers are a little frustrated because the kids are having milk and juice, and so they're having to use the restroom a lot more. Mm-hmm. And so the more that you can cut down on the liquid, the better. And so we want kids to be drinking their milk, but they really don't need juice.
Great. Now we have a couple questions that have to do with grab-and-go, menu suggestions, and breakfast in the classroom menu suggestions. So I'm going to hold those questions until we hear from Scott, because I think Scott can share his perception and his experiences. There was another question I wanted to get to you, Nikki, if you don't mind. Hold tight one second as I scroll through my questions real quick. Sorry. Okay, so we hear that there's press around this, and this one example from this one attendee here is regarding parents and the pushback from parents that when there's universal or free breakfast for all students, and they're already feeding their children at home, and concern over either eating a meal twice. What can you do, or what suggestions do you have for any schools that might have parents that are either concerned that their kids are eating twice, or that the parents aren't wanting their children to participate?
Sure. So if the kids are eating at home, that is wonderful. I mean, that's obviously what we wish to be seeing in all households. But unfortunately, that's not the case. And so parents, have a variety of different options. They can either speak to their children and say, we're having breakfast at home, so you don't need to be having it at school. They can go and speak to the teacher, and they can say, you know what, I'd really like if you because my child is eating at home, it doesn't need to eat at school, and so it doesn't need to receive a breakfast. The research shows because the breakfast meal is quite small, that even if they do eat a couple extra calories within a second breakfast, it's not a whole lot. And kids have a way of adjusting their caloric intake throughout the day. We sort of lose that as we get older and become adults, but kids can adjust their caloric intake. And so a lot of times they will eat less the rest of the day if they ended up having like 1.5 breakfasts. And then many kids who say they have breakfast at home may have had a piece of toast or may have had something very small. And so we just want to ensure that they have an opportunity to have a complete breakfast. But again, obviously, this is totally up to the parents. No student is required to have a breakfast in the classroom. And if they don't want their child to be eating a breakfast in the classroom, then they should tell both their child and or the teacher, cafeteria manager, but they should speak to somebody about it for sure.
Yep. And then just one last question. It was really tagged on to what you were talking about just a moment ago regarding the juice can you offer 1/2 cup of 100% juice and 1/2 cup of fruit to count as the 1 cup requirement?
You should be able to do that, but that remains to be seen. It's not the best way to go, but I'm not quite sure how to answer that yet. I'll have to give me a little more time on that one.
Okay, no problem. Thanks so much. And so if anyone has additional questions for Nikki, we will be able to touch base with Nikki afterwards and communicate those questions and follow up with those answers to your questions. But hopefully the rest of the webinar will be able to answer some of the questions that have come in, and we'll be able to move forward as we are talking to Scott. All right, so Nikki, thank you so much for joining us today. We really do so much appreciate your expertise and your experiences working with school districts in California and across the country, really. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Super. Thank you. So now we have Scott Stoll, and Scott is the food service manager with Schenectady City School District in Schenectady, New York. He's going to be sharing how his district is incorporating healthful options in 19 schools using alternative models. Not only does Scott bring his background of a district working to make it happen, but he's also affiliated with Whitson's Culinary Group. So as a food vendor for Schenectady, he's also aware of the issues that are facing schools around the country regarding whether you're working with a vendor or working with your school in their food service department, and so he can bring both perspectives. Scott's district is also a recipient of Action for Healthy Kids partner AASA, which is the School Superintendents Association, which is a grant to increase breakfast participation. So Action for Healthy Kids is very proud to be able to have this connection with Scott through our partner AASA. So Scott, if you can unmute your phone.
Okay, I'm all set, I believe.
Perfect. Great. Thank
Beautiful.
you.
Thank you very much, Ellen, and thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I appreciate the opportunity to share what we've done at Schenectady with you. And a little bit about myself. I've got 32 years of background in the food service. I worked for colleges and universities for 20 of that. The last 12 have been in school food service in Schenectady. So that has been my only unit that I've worked out of. And a little bit about Schenectady. As you can see, the enrollment is right around 10,000. It's dipping now as the school goes on. We tend to drop down a bit. A very severe need. We have been tagged for having underperforming students. It is a urban district, so we are seeing the issues that a lot of urban districts see. The number of schools that we have are a total of 19, and we have something going on in each and every one of them. Our biggest challenge has always been, and in my entire 12 years, I've always been trying to push breakfast because we had such a high free and reduced population. It made no sense that we were serving 26, 30% breakfast, and that was it. They just weren't coming, although most of them were free or reduced. So in 2012, we decided to go for this grant, and we were going to try and get some money for equipment and start some programs that would help boost our breakfast participation. And we were the recipient of it, and were awarded $325,000 to get the equipment needed to get us off the ground and working towards some of these goals of getting more students through the breakfast line. After just 6 months, we started this in the fall on the very first day of September, and we started breakfast in the classroom in all of our elementary schools on day one, all 15 of them, and we have seen just amazing results as far as attendance. Last year, we would have 36% of our students make 95% of their classes, so there was a lot of absenteeism. This year, that number has increased to over 78% of our students are making 95% of our classes. And it has been shown that the more you are attending school, the better off you're going to be doing, and the higher the chance of graduation. And our graduation rate is right around 50% by the time they get to 12th grade. So this is a result that will not be seeing immediate results, but as we go forward, I hope to be around to see those students 12 years from now walk across the stage, and I'd be very interested in seeing how many are successful. As we have mentioned previously, Nikki went over the different things that you tend to see when you get breakfast in the classroom going, and I can vouch again for the nurses' office visits. As I speak with the nurses, they're seeing many fewer people come down because they're having breakfast in the morning. Most of these kids in our district, the students, it's the only meal they're getting during the day is what they get from us for breakfast and lunch. And so once we get them in and breakfast in their belly, they do much better off. Along with the Breakfast in the Classroom program, we wanted to try and pull in the high school students, and we've offered free breakfast before to high school students, and we've done breakfast raves, and we've done just about anything we could think of to get them to come through the line, but it's very difficult to do. They just weren't coming into the building. They'd rather hang outside and then come in right when classes started. So I thought, well, if we can't get them in, maybe we can catch them as they're coming in last minute or coming in tardy. So we have these school vending machines which vend a complete breakfast, a complete reimbursable breakfast, and these are right at the entranceway at the high school, and I have 4 of them in this area, and I also have one in our middle school because they are suffering the same problems with attendance that we were in the high school. These were two of the bigger additions to our breakfast program. We also do a grab-and-go breakfast for middle school students. We have a couple K through 8s, and it's a great opportunity to have 7th and 8th graders assist in the delivery of the breakfast to the classroom for the younger students, and we have a grab-and-go option for them if they wanted to get it on the run and then go assist taking down breakfast to the students. So those are the 3 big changes that we've done. Examples of the breakfast, we rely very heavily on prepackaged breakfasts which we create. And here you can see one of the New York Giants handing out. There's these prepackaged, this would be a cereal, a juice, and another cracker or another grain. And we do this because we have to serve 7,000 students within a 20-minute period in 300-plus classrooms. And to have a hot breakfast program is nearly impossible. And with these packages, we're able to distribute in a much more efficient manner to make sure everyone's getting the meals. When we switched over to this program, we made sure we also switched over to the community eligibility program, which made sure everyone received a free meal, no matter if they're free, reduced, or full pay standing, because one of the issues was we had 80% of our people free and reduced previously, but no one was coming in. So there must have been something beyond getting a free breakfast that we could pull them in on. And a lot of students were going out to play at the playground versus coming in for breakfast. And therefore, if we fed them in the classroom all together, no segregation between those who can afford breakfast and who can't, we figured that this would certainly assist in getting everyone the meal they needed first thing in the morning. And it's been very successful. As I said, we've jumped from 2,600 to over 7,000 breakfasts every morning for the elementary school students. The middle school and the high school, the program's being used mostly by those coming in tardy, and we're seeing 15 to 20% increase in our breakfast counts in those buildings. And it's been very helpful in that it's keeping some of the students from wandering the halls, because when they get into school, they weren't hungry, they were going looking for food, they were either trying to get into teachers' rest area, vending machines, or coming down and banging on the cafeteria door, and they were supposed to be going right to class. So now, with buy-in from the staff from the high school and the middle school, the students are allowed to bring their meals to the classroom and consume them there, and that's proven to be very, very beneficial to them getting through that part of their morning rather than wandering the halls. We went into this and we had formed a large group to discuss the issues which we might feel were going to be coming up. And they're the same ones that you hear every time breakfast in the classroom or breakfast on the move or vending breakfast grab and go is brought up. The halls are going to be trashed. There's going to be food and wrappers all over the place. People aren't going to be paying attention. They're going to be disrupting class with their eating, and it's just not going to be successful. And that hasn't really been the case. We've planned out pretty well how to take care of distribution and cleanup. We certainly assist with buying the supplies needed, and the grant has been very beneficial for that. We're at the point now where this program will self-sustain because of the reimbursements coming back from the meals. We won't need to really put much more money into it because of the money generated through the use of the program. And we'll be able to serve free meals from now on to all the students because of it. So the initial push not to go into this over the past couple of years because of the monetary issues was overcome by this grant. But I would highly suggest any school looking at doing this to institute it in bits and pieces if they could, just to get them started and going, because it will self-sustain after it gets rolling. And we certainly have seen the success in our unit, and starting to show other schools in the area what we're doing. We've had 4 people from different districts come through the past couple weeks just to take a look at it and get ideas, and hopefully we'll be able to start being an example for those who also wish to provide a program such as these.
Great. I'm going to hop in here. We're
Sure.
getting a lot of questions, Scott, and I'm hoping you can kind of talk a little bit about it. And it really revolves around breakfast in the classroom predominantly.
Yep.
And what do you do? And part of it is with the new meal requirement and some of the things that Nikki mentioned, especially regarding fruit,
Right.
with the offer versus served. Can you do an offer versus served in your model with breakfast in the classroom, or is it pretty much all just the way it's served?
It is what is served. We're going to have to look at that next year, obviously, with the fruit component. Right now, we're not serving the whole fruit in the classroom because of time, the teacher needing to assist the students with appealing things, and the cleanup, basically. We're worried about some of the fruit. And these might be fears that wouldn't come about, but that's the biggest concern that most people have about bringing in whole fruit. Again, next year we might have to revisit that. If we're going to keep this program going, we might need to use whole fruit a couple times a week to balance out the juice we use.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a thought of how you might incorporate that, since we're wrapping up ultimately 2013-14. Have you thought about how that would work yet, or have you gotten into that, or is that your summer project?
It's a project we're working with the corporation. We have a processing plant. We package these cereal packs on our own because Whitson's does do, they have a plant where they can do this and fix this. They're very heavy into preparing emergency meals for catastrophes, and so they've used some of that knowledge to create these packs for us. So we're going to have to look at how can we use these packs and also fulfill the requirements next year with the extra fruit component. And so it's a work in progress, to answer the question. We have not come up with an answer yet.
Yeah, I've seen it working in schools where it's not, I think having it prepackaged is one great option. I've seen it where it comes up in really kind of different carts. So, the student can go through and choose their items and put them in their, as their breakfast. And really they have to, and teachers just are really very well trained. It's not a big deal for them to say, okay, you pick one of these, and that's your, that'll meet your meal.
Right.
So it really is based upon you are able to incorporate choice and the offerings there too. Do you know what schools and teachers might do when students don't take everything or don't eat everything that they take? For example, if they take something and don't open it, or it's a whole piece of fruit, obviously you're saying that right now you're not really serving that, but do you know what students or teachers might do with those items that aren't eaten?
Depending on the item, they often go to what's termed as a share box, and I'm sure most people have something like that in their districts, and it's basically food that's safe to consume because it hasn't been touched or breached by any contaminants, and you're able to share it later. It doesn't usually have to be refrigerated. For example, you don't want to save milk, obviously, through the day, but someone with a refrigerator might have extra milk, and they can put it in there for later if someone needs it. I know that's occurring. I don't really get too involved in that part of it because it's outside of my contract. You know, I'm not supposed to do anything like that, but I do know it occurs.
Yep, and I've seen it too. And in fact, a lot of times I've seen, you know, either the student is able to kind of save it for later, and that's, or it goes in the share basket, and then, and I've seen some school districts also collect things back, and it goes towards local food banks and things like that. So I think you can really also be very creative with that.
Absolutely.
Okay. There were a couple other questions I wanted to get to with you too, Scott, because you know, I think being able to see it in action is really so key, and I think a lot of people deal with pushback. Did you have to do anything special to get your teachers on board? I know you had, I mean, just for anyone that doesn't know, Schenectady has an amazing superintendent that's so supportive of this, and I heard him speak at this meeting with ASA, and he was just, like, brought tears to my eyes in terms of just someone who loves children, and so I think that has a huge help, but was there anything special that you guys had to do?
Well, it's just meeting the needs of what the teachers feel they need to run this program. Some people might need an extra garbage can. They want to have that, and that will help them out. Extra supplies, the grant provided for extra training materials, and like rewards for people that help out in the classroom. If you have like a breakfast sheriff is one of the things we were trained on. If you want to have someone who's in charge of the breakfast group every morning and rotate that responsibility between the students, you know, maybe we can give them a little something extra as a treat, not necessarily food because we don't use that as rewards, but a coloring book or something like that. You know, anything that the program could provide that would make the staff member's life easier, we do. And I constantly get these contacts still. You know, so we are all constantly coming up with new ideas to help make things run more smoothly. We have one school where there's carpet, and the custodial staff said, you know, it would really be nice to have a machine to help clean the carpet versus just the standard vacuum, because, you know, if they spill milk on there, you need some of a wet dry machine. And so we're able to something for them for that because of the money that's coming back into the program. So it's taking care of their needs and concerns.
Great. Just as a quick time check, just so that everyone knows, we are reaching the top of our hour. We're going to extend for about 5 more minutes just to allow for a couple more questions if, Scott, you're able to
Absolutely.
stay on. That's great. Thanks. One of the questions, or actually it's a few questions, regarding budget issues. So we get that we've got new requirements. We get that we're going to have to change some things that we're doing. How does that impact your budget? And does the additional breakfast service help to offset those costs that might be associated with trying to change some things to make it healthier options?
That's a tough one because working for a contractor, I'm set on my budget. I can't go really to the school and say I need X amount of more money next year. We have a preset increase every year for 5 years. If I was an independent person and working without a contractor at a school district, I'd be able to better manage a budget for a food increase like that. So I would imagine if we didn't have the contractor there and we had to spend 8 cents more per meal next year because of some of these requirements, that the school lunch program would be making enough money to cover something like that because of the reimbursement coming back in. And as a contractor, I have to find creative ways to include these changes into my budget, or else another option some contractors might be taking next year when things come down is, even though they're not at the end of their 5-year commitment with the school, they might ask the school to go out to bid again to make sure they cover their costs and don't end up losing money. So that really depends on the school association with or without food service contractor. And basically, do we have money that we could spend on some of these items? And it probably will be substantial because you are doubling your fruit, and fruit is one of the more expensive pieces.
Yeah, and I think too, speaking from the school end and with the reimbursements versus the vendor end, I mean, if you are increasing your breakfast service, then it should be bringing in additional dollars that will help to offset some of those costs, and that's, I think, the ideal situation there.
It is. Okay,
and then I just want to talk a little bit about grab-and-go meals, if you would. Do you have there are certain types of breakfasts that are maybe more popular or go over better than others, or when you set up your menu, do you plan based upon certain foods? How do you determine your grab-and-go?
Well, it's this magic that's mixing what students like with what we can provide with what's available. You have to really plan on. Students might like one thing they're getting at home, but we're just not able to serve it in schools. So, like for example, well, one popular item we are able to provide is yogurt. And for the grab-and-goes, we use a lot of yogurt. And we're obviously, whenever we can serve whole fruit, we do. We have it out at every meal possible in several different types. So we get the yogurt fruit out. And as far as the grain, we have a couple different options with the different types of the crackers or the whole grain bars for breakfast we can use. So we just try and mix it up and provide what's popular. And like I said, yogurt's always a popular one. The bagels with cream cheese, the kids seem to like that, the older ones. And surprisingly, cereals. A lot of people are enjoying cereal, and that's predominantly what we use in those packs. We do muffins also, but lots of cereal we go through.
Yep. Okay, great. And then one more thought on the vending machines. So if you could just kind of talk very briefly about how, obviously you're serving all students free meals, but do they still plug in their ID numbers as they're getting their breakfast to account for?
Absolutely. What happens is you can only use your number once, so you can't use your number in the machine, then run real fast to the cafeteria and try and use it again. And when you use your number in the machine, you also have to enter some other data, and we chose a birthday, a 6-digit birthday. So that goes in. And at that point, we also have a picture taken. And when the transaction is completed successfully, a picture's taken. So if that helps with some of the state requirements of verifying that John Smith bought a meal for John Smith and it's not someone else using his number. So that's how we handle that part.
Great. And I think that the biggest key, and I think there were a couple of questions related to how does, whether this is breakfast in the classroom, a vending machine, a grab and go, how does that work when you don't have universal free? I mean, obviously, if you have a high enough free and reduced percentage, moving to universal free makes things so much easier.
It does.
It makes it easier on your food service. It makes it easier on your classroom teachers. It makes it easier on the students. But if you can't do that, obviously using wireless keypads or keypads for grab and goes are important. And having, you have mentioned your grant through AASA, but there are grants out there. Action for Healthy Kids has grants. Other organizations have grants to help to pay for some of this equipment that you might need, because that's really, once those equipment pieces are in place, that's really the bulk of your expenses, and that hopefully with additional breakfast service, you're able to make other things happen. Thank you, Scott. We
you're very
really
welcome.
do appreciate your time. We're going to go ahead and just talk about the biggest thing that I found as I work with school breakfasts and schools around the country is really about changing perceptions. And feel free to weigh in at any point, Scott, here too. That sometimes it requires, it's not, food service is not what it used to be and what people might remember from when they were in school. So I think there are perceptions that are wrong, plain out wrong, and so that we need to, be excited about these changes. I think, just like Nikki said, being able to provide healthier options for kids is really, it's exciting. And knowing that you have the support of USDA as well as, other organizations around the country that are supporting you, then, it helps to get excited. And when you know that you're serving better food and helping kids be healthy and not hungry, then it's another reason to be excited. But provide nutrition education opportunities to parents, to your teachers, to the students too, letting them know that maybe what they think might be a sugary cereal, it's not the same as maybe what they might have out in the stores. It does meet the requirements. There are so many requirements. Sharing these requirements with your families might let them know that, hey, you know what, this is a good thing and it's good for my kids. So communicate as much as possible. We're a real big believer in offering taste tests to kids, taste tests to families. If you're having a family event at schools, whether it be, a literacy night or a family fitness night or even PTA meetings, being able to incorporate food service in on that meeting is a great idea, and to provide some of those taste test opportunities. And lastly, think about hosting a breakfast event for your families. If you're really facing some challenges with your parents or getting parents on board, invite them in. And, maybe you might have to have a little expense to do that on your end, but the public relations piece of that is really so important. Is there anything that you've done through your work in Schenectady in terms of having to change anyone's perceptions of food service and what you're doing?
Yes, and it always involves one-on-one. I've had, when we first brought this program onto line, we had some people concerned with the nutritional value of what we were feeding people. And they were hearing that we're feeding people cereal and thinking it's the same cereal that's being sold in grocery stores and is available all over the place. So I invite them in and I say, well, how much sugar is too much sugar, and showed them what we were serving, the nutritional requirements right on it, and had a box of the other cereal that we would buy off the shelf, and just showed them there's a huge difference. And for being able to serve everyone so quickly, it was a good option at this point. It doesn't mean we can't grow the program, but whenever we had someone who really had a concern, whether it be about content or procedure, just chatting with them. And sometimes when you have your superintendent with you next to you, that's helpful too, because Larry's a superb leader and really is passionate about this. And if you have someone else like that in your organization, it doesn't hurt to have them next to you when you're discussing some of these issues.
And as Nikki had shared, if you're, if there's a suggestion that you have as a parent or a non-food service oriented worker, then you might want to think about, taking that and having that same communication from the opposite end too. And I think you've probably experienced that and probably learned some things from parents too.
Absolutely.
That have been helpful. All right, well, super. Thank you so much for your time today. There are some additional resources that you'll be getting in your follow-up materials. I encourage you, if this is important to you and you think that every kid should be a healthy child and that schools should be healthier places, take a moment and join Action for Healthy Kids, Every Kid Healthy Pledge. We're trying to create a 100,000 person movement to make sure that all schools are healthier places and thereby that all children have that opportunity to be healthy too. Thank you for those of you that were able to extend a little bit longer. If you had questions that weren't answered, we'll be sure to try to follow up with you. You will receive all of the follow-up material within the next day or two, and we'll be able to get that to you by Friday. And thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. Take care. Bye-bye.